There's been a lot of traumatic things that have happened here, and a lot of unexplained things that have happened here. And of course, in the paranormal world, those two things always go hand in hand. So what we have is, this was originally quarried out, and it was sent to a lot of buildings throughout New England, many of which are actually haunted in their own right. I know that some of this was used in, I think, the rebuilding, not the building, of some of the mansions, the famous mansions in Newport. The quarry actually post-dates most of those being built, so I think it was used in some of the reconstruction, as well as Fort Adams, which I like to call Fort Inconsequential because nothing really ever happened there, but which is also supposedly haunted, as well as the basement or the foundation of the Taunton State Hospital, which is, one of the more frightening places in the Bridgewater Triangle. And so there's kind of this feeling that perhaps if energy can be trapped someplace, if energy can be stored, if vibrations can be stored, and that's negative, can it be then sent out to other places, which would then, for one reason or another, trigger kind of what's trapped in the stone already? So it kind of asks that question. When this was the quarry, the explosive caught on fire, the TNT caught on fire and blew up and killed people, which is why this was closed. So there have been people who have died here in industrial accidents, people who have committed suicide or been pushed, because some people believe the Pukwudgies. Keep in mind, we talked about the Pukwudgie lore of bringing people to the edges of things, or bringing people to water to kind of conquer them or kill them or whatever. People believe that some of that is also maybe Pukwudgie stuff and Pukwudgie related. There have been at least 18 confirmed suicides jumping from the top of that ledge. And you guys feel free to go up there. Like I said, it's a hazardous road. But what's kind of more frightening than the fact that people have actually committed suicide is the fact that people have survived an ordeal of being suicidal at the Assonet Ledge and described being instantly taken over by this feeling of grief and this feeling of despair. I've interviewed people who have actually physically been stopped from jumping off. So people have seen ghostly figures, both at night and during the day, jump from the top of the ledge, come down, and never hit the water, but they've seen these objects. People have seen Native Americans, these two gentlemen I talked to, two brothers, and then their friend who didn't talk to me was here, and they saw people appear and then disappear, appear and then disappear. And they kept appearing in different places all the way down until they finally reached the bottom, kind of that bottom ledge, and then they disappeared entirely and they couldn't see them again. One of the most, for me, emotional moments that I've recorded was a woman who was standing at the top of the ledge. And it kind of goes with this feeling of, we have this unique convergence of tragedy, stone, and water, which are kind of all paranormal ingredients. If you're baking a paranormal cake, that's what you would start with, right? And what she actually, when she was up there, she looked down and she saw these lights coming up out of the water. So they seemed to be down below, because it's very, very deep, you can't reach the bottom, begin to come up from the water. And as they got closer to her, and by closer I mean she's at the top, so it's not really close, the lights got brighter and they got bigger, as if something was coming up to the surface. And then when it reached what she felt would have been the surface of it, they were pulled back down. So the impression she was left with, as she communicated to me, was as if someone was trying to escape, get out of the water, and something then pulled them back down. Along with this, there's been kind of an urban legend attached to one of the more popular or famous sightings here, and that would be the Lady of the Ledge. And Matt, would you like to kind of share a little bit of the Lady of the Ledge?
Sure. I was a personal witness to this prior to being informed of the legend. My first wife was friends with a couple of residents from the town. They're like, yeah, why don't you come up and we'll hang up at the ledge. Like Chris says, it's a place to bring the beer and party. And so we were the first ones up there on the top of the ledge. And when you go up there, if you look out over on that prominence, there's only one way out to it and one way back. I was the first one out of the vehicle walking out onto the ledge area, and I saw this woman in white standing out on the prominence. And I turned around to the people I was with to say, hey, we're not alone. Turned around, and she was gone. And she would have had to walk by me or, take a route within my sight to see her. And at that first instant, I figured, oh crap, she jumped. So I went running over to the edge to look down to find nobody. And the 2 town residents that have lived here all their lives are like, "Oh, you saw the Lady of the Ledge." And they proceeded to tell me this folklore about a woman who had committed suicide because her lover was supposed to meet her here. This was supposedly to happen in the 50s or 40s or what have you. And then there's another legend that it's an Indian squaw that lost her love, her brave, which supposedly came before. But definitely a woman that was supposed to have committed suicide because she lost her love or been jilted by her lover.
Which is a very common theme in the paranormal, which I talk about. That doesn't mean it's the legend might not be true. The legend kind of lends itself to folklore, to mythology, but the sighting is true. People have seen this one for years. Matt saw her himself, and it's been a common thing to both see her fall, or see her jump, and to see her up there kind of on the edge of the woods, between the woods and the edge, kind of looking sad, things like that. It's one of those things where it makes for a really good backstory. We don't know whether the backstory is true, and it probably isn't, but it doesn't discount the fact that she's seen here.
I definitely saw her. She looked as real as you and me, and she was standing right there.
They would be walking through the woods and they would have to know which markers to watch. So a certain color with an upside down cross pointed in a certain direction meant that that's where they were going. And so a lot of the rituals that happen here with cults happened in places like the Assonet Ledge, but also happened deep within the forest. And those bodies, I would imagine, it would be easier to leave where they were than to bring them out, unless they, of course, had some purpose to them.
So, Chris, you believe that there were human victims of sacrifice within the Freetown State Forest?
Definitely. I definitely think that. And I think that the majority of law enforcement people that you ask would agree with that. And they would agree that there were, and always will be, dabblers in this forest. But then there are highly, highly organized groups that were here that ran prostitution, drug running, child pornography, all these different things out of some of the outlining towns of Freetown. But here's where they met, and here's where they got their, on the satanic side of things, their spiritual stuff. That doesn't mean that all groups that are involved in Satanism are inherently evil or criminal. It just means that the particular ones that were running out of this forest, these highly organized ones, also committed murder in these woods.
In the mid-1980s, President Reagan, while flying in Air Force One, had a UFO encounter. A lot of people may have heard of President Reagan having this UFO encounter. What most people don't know is it happened right above here, right above these guys. This is the location where Reagan had made that observation out the side of the window of Air Force One, where this object tracked Air Force One for roughly 3 or 4 minutes, causing Air Force One to call in for air support, which launched fighters out of, I believe, Otis Air Force Base and out of Newport Navy Base.
What year was it?
Mid-80s. I want to say 85, but I think it was more like 84, 83. It definitely, it's on the record, so anybody can look it up. But this is the spot at which he did observe it, and it was recorded on record.
And if I'm not mistaken, when the UFO broke off, Reagan ordered Air Force One to begin tracking it until it lost it.
to follow it. Correct, right. And they followed it over in through Connecticut.